Chapter 8. The doctrine of Paticcasamuppada shown in direct way, Anuloma. Reference to the diagram is invited. This diagram was devised, worked out and drawn by the late Maha, Thera, Mogok, Sayadaw, in accordance with the tenor of the khandhas, aggregate or components, to show that Paticcasamuppada is nothing but the ceaseless proper process of our own khandhas, i.e. perishing of the old one, giving place to a new. In other words, Paticcasamuppada is nothing but causal continuum of arising and vanishing of physical and mental phenomena. Paticcasamuppada. It means that beginning of samsara is inconceivable, being shrouded in avijja ignorance and bound up by tanha, the beginning of beings who are undergoing realms of rebirths from one existence to another is incomprehensible. If the bones of a single being were preserved in a heap, it will reach the height of Mount Wepunala. The ascent to its top will take 4 days. This shows only the bones of a single being. Samsara is so long. When the samsara is said to be so long, it amounts so saying that the period of suffering is long too, and that the cycle of Paticcasamuppada is also long. It is said that the beginning of samsara is avijja. This should not be confused with the first cause or being. Then the question arises, what is avijja? Avijja is ignorance of 4 noble truths, Ariya Satya. 1. Ignorance is the cause of suffering, Samudaya Satya. 2. Ignorance of the suffering or unsatisfactoriness, Dukkha Satya. 3. Ignorance of the cessation of suffering, Nirodha Satya. 4. Ignorance of the path leading to the cessation of suffering, Nirodha Gamini Patipada. To illustrate 1. It is inherent in every one of us to possess and crave for gold, silver and other material wealth. This craving is the root cause of dukkha, sorrow and suffering. Lack of knowledge of this is called ignorance of samudaya satya. 2. Lack of knowledge that our own khandha, aggregates or components, are the very suffering and sorrow, called ignorance of dukkha satya. 3. Lack of knowledge that cessation of all this suffering is the Nirodha Satya, which in other words is supreme Nibbana, is called ignorance of Nirodha Satya. 4. Lack of knowledge that the Noble Eightfold Path is the path leading to the supreme Nibbana is called ignorance of Nirodha Gamini Patipada Satya. Such ignorance is avijja, and all the mental, physical and verbal activities arise out of this ignorance. Therefore the Buddha says, avijja paccaya sankhara. Not knowing the root cause of all suffering and of all sorrow and suffering, all sorts of activities are done or committed for the sake of oneself, one's family, etc., employing all means of contrivances regardless of kusala or akusala, wholesome and unwholesome, to amass wealth, to get to higher promotion, and so on. He may say that he is leading a good life as he carries on legitimate trade, but from the viewpoint of Paticcasamuppada, he is not breaking the chain of samsara, but he is relinking the work of Paticcasamuppada. If and when asked what offence has he done, the answer will be that it cannot be said whether he has committed an offence or not, but what can definitely be said is that he has connected the cyclic order of the chain of Paticcasamuppada and is revolving. Again, in order to attain higher plane in the next existence, he does almsgiving. This is kusala karma, no doubt. Nevertheless, any meritorious deed done with avidya, i.e. because it is done without the knowledge of dukkha satcha, it becomes punya bi sankara, avidya paccaya kusala sankara punabi. Almsgiving as well as keeping moral precepts, sila, are done with a view to attuning higher planes, i.e. to become Deva or Brahma in the next existence. It is also avidya paccaya kusala sankara. There is also usual utterance of wishes in the end, saying that the wishes be fulfilled. Even if these wishes are fulfilled and they become Devas or Brahmas, the beginning of the next existence is birth, jati. Jati is nothing but dukkha satcha. Jati pi dukkha satcha dhammacaka pavanatana sutta. Sankara paccaya vinyanam means because of sankara, whether kusala or akusala, there arises the rebirth consciousness. The beginning of every existence is rebirth consciousness. The very existence which we are undergoing is nothing but dukkha, sorrow and suffering. Pure and simple, although we have been deceived and deluded by avidya, sukha, happiness. Therefore it is up to the yogi to ponder for a moment whether it is desirable for him to long and wish for higher position in their next existence whenever almsgiving or any meritorious deeds are done. The best advice for the yogi is to strive for the cessation of suffering, as rebirth in the form of Deva or Brahma or any form of existence is dukkha itself and nothing but dukkha. Vijnana paccaya namarupam. He who begets jati also begets nama and rupa. Reference to section 2 is invited. Because of vijnana, there arises namarupa. It should be scrutinized if there is I, me or mine in the vijnana. In the nama and rupa too, scrutiny must be made whether there is any element of personality as I, me, mine, he or she. Vijnana is the patisandhi vijnana and is the beginning of the present existence, and in that vijnana there is no ego, self, I, he or you. It is only the outcome of sankara. In the nama rupa too, careful examination and thorough scrutiny will reveal that there is no element of any personality as ego, self, I, mine, me or he. Neither is there mine or any possessor. It is only the resultant continuum of causal continuum or Paticcasamuppada. Namarupa paccaya salayantanam. Where there is nama and rupa, the phenomenon does not end then and there. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind arise because of nama rupa. I is the resultant phenomenon of the causal phenomenon, in which there is nothing which can be claimed as ego, I, mine, or me. It is the resultant continuum of the causal continuum. It is not I or my atta, nor mine. Nose, similarly, nose is the resultant phenomenon of the causal phenomenon, in which there is nothing which can be claimed any element of personality, ego or I, mine or atta. Tongue and body and mind can also be implied and understood as the foregoing. These sense bases, salayatana, or 6 dhammas, which widen the scope of samsara, or in other words, they spread out and lengthen the cyclic chain of Paticcasamuppada. Eye widens the scope of samsara, also ear, nose, tongue, body and mind widen the scope of the samsara. Reference should be made to chapter 3 and check your own self and see for your own self whether or not you stop just as the sight, or at the sound or the smell or the taste, touch or the thought. To illustrate, if you happen to see a beautiful object, do you stop at the sight, or do you go a step further and say, I like it, or I want to have it? You do not stop then and there, but will try to have it by one way or the other. This is called the linking of samsara, or elongating the chain of Paticcasamuppada, or widening the scope of samsara. Similarly, the remaining 5 salayantana may be implied and understood in the same manner. Salayantana paccaya passo means because of the eye, there arises eye contact. Because of the nose, there arises ear contact. Because of the nose, there arises nose contact. Because of the tongue, there arises tongue. Because of the body, there arises touch contact. Because of the mind, thought contact arises. Pasa paccaya vedana means because of contact, feeling arises. Because of eye contact, vedana arises, which depends on the eye. In Pali it is called Chakku Sampassaja Vedana. Feeling depending on the eye is called Chakku Sampassaja Vedana. In the same way, feelings depending on the other sense basis, respectively called Sota Sambhaja Vedana, Gana Sampassaja Vedana, Jiva Sampasa Vedana, Kaya Sampasa Vedana, and Mano Sampassaja Vedana. Vedana is divided into 3 kinds, i.e. Sukha, Dukkha and Upekkha, or it is divided into 5, i.e. Sukha, Dukkha, Somanasa, Domanasa and Upekkha Vedana. Or if again it is subdivided, it will cover a considerable field. However, the intending yogi has to bear in mind that whenever there is contact or impact on 6 sense basis or doors, dwara, there appears Vedana of some sort, so it goes without saying that Vedana is not to be sought after purposely, for Vedana of one kind or another is always appearing or prevalent on 6 sense basis whenever there is pasa contact. Vedana paccaya tanha, dependent on Vedana there arises tanha. If it arises depending on visible object, it is called rupa tanha. Similarly, Sada Tanha on sound, Gandha Tanha on odour or smell, Rasa Tanha or taste, Potaba Tanha on contact, and Dhamma Tanha on thought. Tanha Paccaya Upadana means depending on tanha, grasping arises, clinging or overwhelming desire, or tanha of greater magnitude. There are 4 upadana: kamupadana, overwhelming sensual desire; dittu padana, overwhelming desire for wrong view; sila batu padana, overwhelming desire for wrong practices and observances; and atawadu padana, overwhelming egoistic desire. Upadana paccaya kama bhavo, depending on overwhelming desire for grasping, there arises kaya kama, physical activities; vaci kama, verbal activities; and mano kama, mental activities. Any of these 3 activities is called kama bhava, which is the last factor in section 3. In the first section, past causal continuum, it is to be understood as sankhara. According to Abhidhammatta Sangha, it consists of loke kusala and akusala citta, numbering 29. Kama bhava paccaya jati means due to physical, verbal and mental activities, jati, rebirth consciousness, arises. Be it whatever jati, the beginning of patisandhi vijnana, birth consciousness. The Buddha said, jatipi dukkha. It means jati is dukkha saccaya. Whether it is jati of man, deva or brahma, it is for the yogi to decide at this juncture whether it is worth while to wish and long for the jati in the next existence. When jati is begotten, what are its implications? What will be the eventual prize? The answer is jati paccaya jara marana. It is obvious that because of jati, jara, marana are begotten, or in other words, jati is inevitably followed by old age and death. To be more lucid, when one begets jati, one is followed by old age, disease, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair, and the whole mass of dukkha. Reference may be made to the diagram. This is the circumgration of Paticcasamuppada shown in accordance with the Buddha's teaching. It is obvious now that from the past causal continuum, present resultant arises. In continuum, from the present resultant continuum, again emanates present or future causal continuum. From the future causal continuum emanates future resultant continuum. The future resultant again becomes the past causal continuum, which gives rise to the present to the future, and the future to the past, and so on. Thus the chain of Paticcasamuppada, or the samsara, or the process of arising and passing away of phenomena from moment to moment, is making its usual cyclic revolution as infinitum. By way of satya, there arises the recurring process of samudaya, which gives rise to dukkha, and dukkha, on the other hand, give rise to samudaya, and so on. In the same way, the past becomes the present becomes the future becomes the past, and the past becomes the present, and so on in endless cyclic order. Because of ignorance, one does all sorts of wholesome or unwholesome deeds for which one gains nothing. But Paticcasamuppada, 5 aggregates or component, which is dukkha satcha, pure and simple. Again, led by avidya and goaded by tanha, the ordinary worldling commits all sorts of acts for his own material gains or benefits of his family, which will undoubtedly lead him to apaya bhumi. Nay, he also does meritorious acts which may lead him to a higher plane of existence. To illustrate the daily life, A sees he feels serious, he is overwhelmed with the desire to own, and eventually he tries to obtain. No doubt he obtains, and what he obtains is jati, according to Paticcasamuppada. When jati is obtained, it is again dominated and influenced by avidya and tanha. This section 1 connects section 2, which connects section 3. From section 3 there arises section 4. In this way the cyclic order of Paticcasamuppada goes on endlessly forever. It revolves one full fresh circle after the old one, and so on. The endless process goes on ad infinitum. All of us had been within this causal nexus without ever having the slightest chance of seeing the way out. Had we done this, we would not have been as we are now. Reference to the diagram is invited. Readers are asked to see for themselves in what section they are at present. The answer invariably will be that they are in section 2, where Vijnana, Rupa, Salayatana, Pasa, Vedana can be seen, which when classified fall into 5 aggregates, Panchakanda, and again into dukkha satcha. Dependent on the past causal continuum, i.e. vidya, sankara, tanha, upadana and bhava, there arises panchakanda, present resultant continuum. Therefore section 1 is samudaya satcha, while section 2 is dukkha satcha, and as such there is only the process of samudaya and dukkha, while magga and nirodha satchas are hidden from the view, and these two lokuttara are non-prevalent and absent from us, as we do not try or care to approach any reliable teachers who can lead us to the right path, Arya Satcha. Now it is urged that the readers, to attain the 2 lokuttara satchas and embrace the same in their bosom at a time when satcha sermons were expounded by the late Maha, Thera, Mogok, Sayadaw, it is also behooved that magga and nirodha satchas should be apprehended by the practice of magga brahmacharya, practice of vipassana meditation, so that spokes, wheel, rod, rim, axis and hub of Paticcasamuppada can be broken. It also behooves the yogi to read this chapter over and over again, so that he is well conservant with this doctrine and understands it.